Very good morning to our viewers here in Nigeria and those watching us all around the world virtually. Thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast Central this Wednesday morning. It's another opportunity to share with you the big conversations happening here in Nigeria and also have your say on some of these major conversations. I am Osaogie Ogbawa.
And I am Olive Emodi. Between queuing in the field traffic and also looking at what the economy is saying as we count down to the 1st of August, which is tomorrow, it's been quite a difficult time being Nigerian. Now, being a Nigerian and living in Nigeria has come with a number of its challenges. And we're going to be sharing some of these conversations as we proceed today. Also to talk about the fact that there's been difficulty with loading electricity. Lots of Nigerians in different parts of the country have complained about the inability to purchase power and, to receive the token and load same. It's been quite interesting times, with the supermarkets being flooded with those who are panic buying as the protests are scheduled to begin tomorrow. But those are not the top conversations that we have today. But before we get into that, Osagi, I don't know if you've done any shopping yet. I haven't done any shopping, but I have friends who have said that they have been to the supermarkets and it's a mess. People are going in, their numbers to shop because everyone's just a bit afraid about what this will mean if the protest does happen tomorrow, which, is starting to look very likely.
Yeah, there will. I don't doubt that there will be a protest. It's pretty much the same thing that happened just before the lockdown in 2020, where supermarkets were filled because people had to restock. I haven't done any. For some reason, I just haven't bothered. Maybe I will today if I remember. But it's understandable, that people want to prepare themselves for the possibility that, there might be difficulty accessing these supermarkets, not necessarily because there will be violence or chaos or anything. I don't expect that there will be. I'm hoping that the major players are able to manage the situation. I watched an interview yesterday, and the point that the guest was making was that it was, this, is a clear sign of how the current administration has failed in its way to also manage, the situation, and that in previous governments, in previous administrations, under, the previous party, which was the PDP, they did have protests, but it was always somehow, some way managed to some extent, and it never broke, led to a complete breakdown of law and order. So this really just shows the ability of the current administration to manage not just protests, but even the basic idea of criticism, generally. They've not been able to do that, and that's why we always have these fears that a protest will lead to anarchy and a breakdown of law and order, mostly because of their poor management of dissenting voices, their poor management of the idea that people will be disgruntled with the way that they've managed the affairs of the country. And that's really what it is. Their quick response always is to, maybe, set up a counter-protest or to, say that, it is going to be invaded or infiltrated by thugs and by violence and all of that. It's never a situation where they understand what the people are saying and they're willing to discuss.
Beyond it being a situation where they understand, it's also being able to communicate that they understand, right? I saw the video of Ogbuke addressing the youth in Abuja, in Buharis, and explaining to them a number of the cries and the agitations that these youth have. First of all, he applauded them for having made their concerns known without it being destructive in the form of a protest that will turn violent. He also applauded them for how they had communicated their displeasure to the government. And then he made a lot of promises, including promise of, certain roads being fixed. I remember him categorically saying something about, we promise you, I think that they're creating few appointments for youths. And he did say something in the line of, I told you that if I speak to Mr. President will approve. Yesterday night, I spoke to Mr. President, and Mr. President approved. And everybody was hailing him. The youth were shouting in excitement, which was a bit interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But one thing he's done, that the President hasn't done, is address his people. Even though, in his capacity as what some would refer to as governor of the state, of the Federal Capital Territory, he's been able to have a conversation with the people to address them and make them feel like we empathize. He will say things like, a hungry stomach doesn't have patience. I understand, but by December we'll come back and do this. We hear that the farmers, or so and so people are having access to these roads and these lands, we will come back and fix it. Yes, there will be the argument that a lot of this is probably a ploy to prevent this youth from protesting, because why now? But then again, if you're protesting and you're communicating your displeasure about how the government has run things, it's because you want them to respond to you, you want them to give you timelines, which is kind of what he did, and everybody's asking, why is he approving? Like, why is Nyesom Wike able to meet the president and is approving things, and he's not able to talk to the people of Nigeria to say, this is what is happening. I understand your pain. I feel your pain. This is what we're doing within so and so timelines. And by the end of this month, you expect to see this kind of change and that kind of change.
I don't think it also works like that. I think anyone who believes that there's going to be a change in 2 weeks or in a month, you know, is being lied to.
No. So I don't think that you will see a change in 2 weeks or a month, right? But being able to say, maybe in the next 3-4 months, these are
I'm responding to, you know, what you said, what you're quoting Nyesom Wike to have said. You know, anybody who tells you that you will see a difference in a month's time is lying to you. Okay, maybe says December. You know, it's also not being very honest. But we'll see, you know, and again, you have a fair point. Why now? You know, why did it take 14 months for, you know, and of course, you know, a couple of weeks after the calls for a protest before he started making these statements? Before we share with you what our top stories are, it's also important to, you know, share our condolences with the family of Onyeka Onwenu. News reports, of course, came in yesterday saying that the legendary Nigerian musician passed on yesterday. She was aged 72. And so our hearts and our condolences to her family, and we hope that, you know, they have the strength from God to bear her loss.
That was such a sad story. I mean, it's a loss for our country.
Yes, it is.
Onyeka Onwenu she's a part of Nigeria's entertainment history, you know, part of our music, where we talk about the kinds of music that we're seeing today. You know, people like Onyeka Onwenu were able to walk so that we have the likes of other people, other singers and songwriters be able to run. And it would have been an honor to watch. Unfortunately, I never got the opportunity to meet her in person or to watch her perform in person. And I can imagine how much of a hurt it will be for her family and her loved ones. And yes, rest in peace, Onyeka Onwenu. You would forever be remembered in our country. As we proceed with the conversations this morning, let's share with you what our top stories are. Nigerians split over planned nationwide protests. Some for, some against, some protesting to stop the protest. Lagos to tax remote workers. Influencers eyes 200 billion naira. Very interesting. We've been seeing a lot of kickback against this. Plateau government backs down from protest, says peace is key. And we also have the Paris 2024 Olympic Game updates we'll be bringing to you, and you know how Nigeria is faring in that as well. And the newspaper front pages will be reviewing and opening the phone lines for you to be a part of the conversation. All these and more on Breakfast Central. And now let's bring you breakfast headlines.
And now on Breakfast Headlines, Senate President Godswill Akpabio has appealed to Nigerian youths to shelve their planned protests, assuring them that President Bola Tinubu is working on meeting their request. The Senate President made this known at the NDDC Executive Management Engagement with Niger Delta ethnic nationalities, youth leaders and selected stakeholders held in Port Harcourt in Rivers State. In the meantime, the Managing Director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, Samuel Ogbuke, believes the region can still survive in the face of economic hardship in Nigeria. The NDDC leader, who said this at the NDDC Executive Management Engagement with Niger Delta ethnic nationalities, youth leaders, and selected stakeholders held in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, however, established that there are challenges bedeviling the nation. And barely 48 hours before the start of the planned nationwide protest, or rather 24 hours, protest against hunger and bad governance, the governor of Bayelsa State, Douye Diri, has cautioned youth of the state to be wary of failed politicians who planned to use the national protest to disturb the peace of the state. Speaking during the 34th State Security Council meeting in Yenagoa, Governor Diri said security reports available to him indicate that politicians that lost the last governorship election in the state were plotting to cause mayhem. Also in the news, African waters are strategic gateways for international trade, as 38 out of 54 countries are coastal states, and over 90% of Africa's import and exports are conducted by sea. The United Nations says maritime zones under Africa's jurisdiction total about 13 million square kilometers, including territorial seas, and approximately 6.5 million square kilometers of continental shelf. The African Union describes the blue economy as the new frontier of Africa's renaissance. This, however, instituted the call on nations in the continent to harness their potential. Now, in politics, Nigeria's electoral body says that about 1,766 election observers drawn from 78 observer groups may miss the upcoming governorship elections in Edo and Ondo states. The national chairman of the body, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, made this known at a quarterly consultative meeting with civil society organizations in Abuja ahead of the polls and revealed that as of July the 29th, only 56 organizations have uploaded the details of 894 observers to the INEC portal. And our stories in North Africa, where Libya has repatriated 369 irregular migrants to their home countries, Nigeria and Mali, including more than 100 women and children. Mohamed Bareda, head of the Libyan Interior Ministry organization tasked with halting irregular migration, said 2 repatriation flights took place transporting 204 Nigerians and 165 Malians. The UN agency provides free return flights to migrants and help reintegrating them into their home countries with its voluntary humanitarian return program. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Stay with us as we go back to Breakfast Central and continue with our top stories. I am Osaogie Ogbon.
The Plateau State government has said there is no need for the planned nationwide protest slated for August 1st. Speaking at a gathering of youths in the state through the secretary to the state government, Samuel Jatau, Governor Caleb Mutfwang said the peculiarity of security issues in Plateau State necessitated the call to refrain the protest in the state. News Central's Chizoba Anyonwe tells us more.
It is no longer news that August 1 has been set aside for a nationwide protest to express the displeasure of Nigerians on the economic hardship experienced by many citizens in the country. Prices of foodstuff and other commodities have continued to soar, making many people to live from hand to mouth. On the basis that Plateau has suffered many unrests over 2 decades and still grappling with fragile peace, the government urged youth leaders to stay away from the protest in the interest of peace.
You are the leaders. This is the time for you to draw your inner strength and lead your people very well. You know that on the plateau, peaceful protest has a very thin line of turning into violence. Do you agree with me? From history. Now, do we want to begin to destroy our parents' cars, our uncles' shops, government property, which is your property? Will that help us? That will only result in taking the hand of the clock back. So that is not the best way to go.
Lending its voice to this call is the Plateau State Coalition of Youth Leaders during a press conference in Jos.
We in Plateau State wish to unequivocally disassociate ourselves from the anticipated protests due to the ambiguous and unclear circumstances surrounding it. As responsible youth leaders within our respective communities, we are deeply committed to the welfare and well-being of our people. We pursue these objectives with a foundation of equity, reciprocity, aiming of peace and development of our communities.
The Plateau State Police Command, in an exclusive interview with News Central, says measures have been put in place to ensure the safety of both lives and property with or without the protest.
During the protests, we want to assure them of their security before, during, and after the protest. So we have been asking them to come out and come and talk to us on how they want to move, and we will advise them on where they should go to and where they should not go to in order not to aggravate situations on the plateau. And like you know, Plateau State has its own fair share of unrest, but by the grace of God, today we have been having relative peace.
Alfred Alabo further added that no group had expressed interest in the planned protest, rather those of them that are dissociating themselves from the exercise. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyonwe.
With only 1 day left until the planned nationwide hunger protest, Nigerians remain divided on the issue, as some support the demonstration while others express opposition. Young Nigerians are expressing widespread discontent with the current administration's policies and are set to take to the streets from tomorrow. This has elicited mixed reactions from influential voices and the general public.
Now, in an effort to prevent potential disruption, the government has urged organizers to reconsider their decision to proceed with the protest. As tensions rise, Nigerians anxiously await the outcome of the 10-day protest. And, of course, looking forward to seeing how things turn out. Now, joining us is Nigerian politician and human rights activist, convener of the Revolution Now movement, Omoyele Sowore. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for bringing me this one.
All right. I mean, you've been an active member of, the civil society for a long, long time. You've participated in many protests, even some of them that, were seemingly, violent. Well, you were attacked. So I want your thoughts on when the government says, the protest should not hold because of the fears that it will be invaded by thugs and people would hijack the protest to commit anarchy on the Nigerian state. Is this a genuine concern that the Nigerian police and the Nigerian government should have in order to discourage protesters?
No, it is a very well recognized internationally known right that people have, that obligation to their conscience to object to whatever is wrong in their society. And that is what protests are about. And that is why protest has been used as a tool to effect change by social, political, and economic change agents around the world. The people that are referred to as thugs are actually not thugs. They are relatives, friends, cronies, and associates of those in government. That is why it is so easy to mobilize them on election days. On protest days, because they are hoodlums during protests, and they are thugs during elections to help them rig elections. So it is wrong and unacceptable for us to continue to carry on with the narrative that because of people that government has weaponized and empowered and armed, equipped to kill, destroy, and distract people with, the people should not exist anymore. We might as well just rename our country Federal Republic of Thugs, because it seems that thugs who are in limited number are more important than 200 million Nigerians. That is what the government is telling you. But we understand that this has been a gimmick that has been around for ages in trying to discourage and intimidate people whenever they want to exercise their fundamental rights to protest against unpopular government policies, yes.
Part of the complaints and the criticism that have been leveled against the administration is that they have had enough time to address Nigerians, enough time to, for the president to speak. So talk to us about the body language of the president, and is there anything that the presidency could have done differently to avoid or prevent this protest from happening?
When NSAS took place, the protests had already commenced before there were demands. Some demands, there was one demand which was to erase SARS. But in this case, this protest or revolt, as it is, the government is understanding it to be, is such that the demands had been presented several weeks ago in advance to the government. And in fact, if you watch the timelines of some of the government handles or their official people like Bayo Nonuga, they have been addressing the demands on their own. They're saying this one is possible. All of it to them is impossible. So they're aware of it, but the goal is not to fix Nigeria. It's not to address these fundamental demands that are existential in nature. Their goal is to assert that nobody in this country has a right to complain whenever they take unpopular decisions. And that is why their body language has been to mobilize the military, to mobilize the police, and to mobilize thugs, to bribe and cajole, and in some cases coerce people, to detain and arrest people as they've done in Sokoto, Kano, Kaduna. And last night, the Abuja police went and raided a printer, and took away their computers. What's their crime? They claim that they are printing protest banners and posters and placards. So does that look like a government that's interested in addressing public grievance? No, they're not. Because honestly, they have nothing to offer.
Yeah. All right. I also want you to quickly speak on some of the demands from the protest. I saw, that you also shared this on your X or Twitter page. Some of the demands for the Days of Rage protest. One of them, of course, says scrap the 1999 Constitution and replace it with a people-made Constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, toss the Senate arm of the Nigerian legislative system, and keep the House of Representatives, pay Nigerian workers minimum wage not less than 250,000, invest heavily in education. It also says release Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and other things. End banditry, restructuring Nigeria to accommodate Nigeria's diversity, and a couple other things. Do you think these things are achievable, with a 10-day protest? Do you think the Nigerian government, some of them that you've mentioned, here, or that I mentioned here, like releasing Nnamdi Kanu and, the constitution that you're asking that it should be scrapped and replaced, are these things achievable with a 10-day protest? Or is the protest really just to make a point to the Nigerian government?
They're achievable in hours if the government is really interested in resolving these issues. Let me, bring your minds to when the president wanted to approve the minimum wage, the one that we are opposed to, which is the 70,000 naira minimum wage that can buy a bag of rice. It took them just a few hours to get the rubber stamp Senate and House of Rep to approve it. When he wanted to extend the tenure of the Inspector General of Police by 4 years, it took them just a few hours. When they wanted to buy a private jet for $100 million, it took them just a few days before. I'm sure negotiation might have been on, but without making it so complex for people who are listening to you, we always make it sound like it's impossible for things to get done in Nigeria whenever it favors the public. But whenever it wants to favor the political class, it doesn't take time. It doesn't take time to get anything that they want. It doesn't take them time for them to loot. It doesn't take time for them to destroy. It doesn't take time for them to oppress and suppress Nigerian people. It doesn't take time for them to kill the people of Nigeria. But when Nigerians demand for things that are existential in nature, that enhances their dignity and well-being, we are always arguing if it is possible. But we live in a country where it is possible for somebody to have everything, and it's impossible for a majority to have just a little. That is where the problem is with these arguments that we're making. South Africa had apartheid until 1994. They had a different constitution for the period or duration of apartheid, which was almost, which was more than a century almost long. But when they wanted to end apartheid, it took them a few weeks to put in place an interim constitution and transition to a black majority rule in South Africa. So the same thing with Kenya, even last week. Everything that the government said was impossible before the protests started was possible in a matter of days. So they are going to be humbled by the people because it is the people now that are exercising their power and authority.
Just to add to that, the one that you posted, right, that is tagged Days of Raid Protest, End Bad Governance in Nigeria for the Days of Raid Revolt, and the list of demands, there's about 15 of them, with diaspora voting. There's a different one, which we shared on our screen just a few minutes ago, that has 10 demands. Does this mean that, exactly this one, does this mean that the demands are varying amongst different sectors of the protest or different, parts of the protest? You have one that has 15 demands. This one has 10 demands. This one doesn't mention Nnamdi Kanu. This one says, release NSAS, protesters that are still in detention. Yours mentions release Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Isn't that already showing an issue here?
There's no issue at all. There are a lot of people who are aggrieved across Nigeria. And some of the demands you must have come across are even tailored to their local needs. Some of them are interested in demands that will make their life better in the states and their local governments. So there's nothing. Our own is the global demand. A lot of people don't even understand what it means for the diaspora to vote. So, but because we have a deep understanding of what will solve the problem affecting Nigeria, that is why we are not presenting a list of demands that are limited in nature. But that doesn't mean that the demands you have read, which came from another group, are not legit. It just shows to you that a lot of people are in a hurry to get a lot of things resolved. But you also have found some common demands across board, like reversal of the petroleum subsidy removal. Our one says corruption-free because they can return it and continue the corruption and the binging on the national treasury that they do with it, which is corrupt regime of subsidy, which has been the problem that they admitted is that their friends, cronies, and their associates just robbing with this. But it is the duty of government to clean that corruption. And what basically we are saying, and you have seen, is that Nigerians across board, north, south, and in the middle, on the sides, they're all tired. They want to leave, and they want a solution to their problems. And they're saying to those who are in government, if you cannot ship up, you ship out.
And what do you say to those who argue that whilst they recognize the right to protest, and while the Constitution recognizes the right to protest, there are also limitations to that right, where there is a fear of, in fact, I'm going to quote Section 45 that says, nothing in Section 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41 of this Constitution shall invalidate any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, A, in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health, or B, for the purpose of protecting the rights and freedom of other persons. And part of the argument would be that when one person's right begins, another person's right, or when one person's right ends, another person's right begins. So what would you say to those who argue that, yes, the right to protest is guaranteed, but that the guidelines should be strictly implemented to ensure that the rights of others, like businessmen and those who have to move freely every day, is not in any way inhibited?
That is the reason we want to scrap that 1999 Constitution. It's so limiting of our ability to freely express ourselves. It's destroying the ability of Nigerian people to achieve their potential. So you are reading the Constitution that we have already told you should be scrapped. But even if you want to believe in the 1999 Constitution, which was written by the military guys, because that's how they think, you should also understand that these protesters at this time, and that has always been the case, has always made it clear to government that they are not involved. This is non-violence. They're not engaging and involving in violence. You and I know, media people, that it is government that's always, all the time, 100% engaged in violence. They're the ones who are now mobilizing people in Lagos to attack protesters across board. They're the ones who have gone to mobilize traditional worshippers, the Oro worshippers who are roaming the streets of Lagos, those elders who sold the future of young people in this country. The elders that Wole Soyinka used to say is wasted generation, who didn't fight for themselves, didn't fight for their children, and are now standing in the way of a generation that wants to liberate themselves. It's government that is mobilizing them. So the right to protest is very clearly enshrined in their own constitution, the 1999 military constitution. But they are not interested in those rights. They're interested in limiting the rights of people who want to protest, or even asking them outright that they cannot protest. If you follow any of the people who are protesting against protests now, you will find police guarding them. They're engaging in marches, they're engaging in street demonstrations, and the police provides complete coverage for them. They are telling us yesterday when a group of civil society leaders met with the IG that they want to restrict us to 2 locations. They even went ahead to get a court order from the Lagos High Court in Ogbuke saying that there are 2 locations for protests in Lagos. So, and why we're going to challenge that, because it's unconstitutional according to what you have read of their own constitution, we have also said, in the meantime, if that's the case, Lagos State government, the Lagos State TIB unit has written to the governor of Lagos to provide buses from over 10 locations that will bring people to the protests at 8 a.m. and return them back to their place of convergence at 6 p.m. If you can't do that, that means those people will have to converge in those places and start walking towards your designated places in Ojota and K2. Right. So what I'm trying to tell you is that their interest is not those things you read, the fine print of the Constitution. Their interest is to keep suppressing people, is to keep beating up the Nigerian people and also preventing them from crying out when they're in pain.
All right, Mr. Shore, what are your expectations with regards to numbers? And do you also, feel that, Nigerians will truly come out from tomorrow and demand some of these things that you've, stated in the End Bad Governance 15-point demands? Do you think that you would have a large number of people? Do you think that Nigerians are truly fed up and are really ready to demand a better Nigeria?
Well, there's no question about the fact that Nigerians are fed up. They're fed up with this system of oppression, system of incompetence, and a system that continues to denigrate them and strip them of their dignity. No question about it. And you have to give it to Nigerians that they're some of the most resilient people in the world. Otherwise, who takes this from anybody in the world? Not even primary school students who take that from principals or their head teachers anymore these days. So, but having said that, I should tell you that the numbers are very, very important. And I can tell you that a lot of people are going to protest tomorrow. Either they are going to do that offline or online, whether they do that at home or outside of their homes. I cannot tell you how many people will come out until tomorrow comes. And tomorrow is the beginning of a series of actions to resist the government. So it starts tomorrow, but it doesn't end tomorrow until we win.
All right. I also want to ask, this protest and its demands, does it take the shape of what you would have imagined for revolution now? Is this maybe in some measure what you have been advocating for? And also, do you have fears that there might be a semblance of what happened or a repeat of what happened at the 2020 NSAS protests?
So everything you saw in our demands this time around were also demanded in 2019, except for releasing Nnamdi Kanu. But in 2019, we sought for the release of ex-Zakizaki, the leader of Shiites, who had been in detention for years at that point. Ex-Zakizaki has now been released, and I am not aware that he has killed even a rat or any of his members. They have been engaging also in peaceful protests, even though government keeps shooting at them when engaging in these peaceful protests since he was released. But in 2019, we had 10 demands. Now we have 15, and because some of them in 2019 has been fulfilled, and there's some more needed to be fulfilled this time around. That's why the numbers increase. As a matter of fact, Nigerians ought to have 64 demands on the government. That's one demand per year since independence. But listen, we have done what is needed to serve a notice on these people that Nigerians are fed up as we keep discussing. We expect that they will respect themselves enough, and I mean this seriously, not to try what they tried in 2020. If they do, they would be immediately faced with a different society, immediately. They'll be immediately faced with different level of resistance, because every culture of oppression breeds a different level of resistance. That much I can tell you. And this is not a threat. It is the promise of the Nigerian people that they cannot continue to be subjugated by governments that are supposed to be civilian in nature, but who continue to act to be disrespectful of their rights and existence. Nobody, and I mean nobody, will accept the kind of thing they did in 2020, from which they themselves have not recovered anyways.
All right. Also, I have repeatedly said, that it has been very important in the last couple of weeks since the conversations about the protest started, that it's important that President Bola Tinubu addresses the nation, finds a way to calm the nerves of Nigerians and assures Nigerians that they are in safe hands. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow morning in the start of the protest, do you think that the president, has words that he maybe should use if he decides to address the people today that would maybe change the mind of Nigerians against protesting tomorrow?
I think our demands are clear. Our demands are non-negotiable. If he likes, he can go and borrow, how to talk from somewhere else. Nobody will be fooled by it. We know the characteristics of those who are in government. As a matter of fact, it is important to say to Nigerians, and this is why they should appreciate standing up, that some of the government has been behaving as if, they're here to do some things. Because suddenly NNPC is openly recruiting. I know that if the protests are over, they'll go back to their usual ways. The army has recruited people. Phone companies or telcos that were disconnecting numbers had to restore them immediately when they saw that people were really upset. They have made available money for some kind of loan for young people. In fact, it was when these protests began that he hurriedly called the Nigerian Labour Congress to come for a meeting to approve their 70,000 naira. Up until then, nothing was done. They had been negotiating back and forth. I remember attending a protest in Abuja in March 2024 with the Nigerian Labour Congress. And they were complaining that they were just lying to them. But the moment this protest was announced, they came, called them to a meeting. They signed a new minimum wage. They approved a minimum wage, signed it into law. But sadly, it was too late. It was too little, too late. So there's no amount of sugarcoating that will make Nigerians forget that this government didn't come to serve them. And they will have to, and in doing so, they have to meet the conditions set by the Nigerian people. So nobody is going to be fooled if by tomorrow you see a contrite president trying to act as if he believes in you.
Right.
We'll know that that's as entered the era of Yahoo.
And yes, there are different points on the agenda that the Nigerians are asking for, which is why they're heading to the protests. But the main trigger, we would think, would be the fact that the economy, as many would say, hasn't been the best in the past few months and years. And people are hungry. People are hungry. Inflation is at an all-time high. Now, we often would hear that regardless of who came into power, regardless of which presidential candidate came into power, that the chances are high that we will still have landed where we are. Do you agree or not?
Not true. Not true. You have someone in front of you talking to you who never proposed to remove fuel subsidy, because I know it will cause untold hardship, or the floating of the naira. I spoke extensively about it in 2022 and 2023. And so many of the decisions they are taking now, like building a $21 billion naira mansion for the vice president, buying $100 million jet for the president, the amount of corruption that has happened, awarding 16 trillion naira project without bidding and transparency to a friend of the president in the name of the Coastal Highway. So many of the malfeasance of this government, since there's no serious precedent that should have done it. But I'll tell you this: what is driving the Bola Tinubu's regime impunity is what they got away with in Lagos. This is how they started in Lagos, like a joke. They were calm. They started, And then they took over Lagos. And they started telling people that they're the ones who built Lagos, even though they just practically just converted Lagos to their private estate. So it is that impunity that took them to Abuja. The impunity that what is everybody going to do to us? They're just shrugging their shoulders at you. But now they woke up one day and discovered that, oh my goodness, these people are not joking.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll see how things turn out tomorrow. Like you've said, you expect that there would be a large turnout of Nigerians willing to protest and make these demands. Would also like to see what the response of the current Nigerian government is in different parts of the country, here in Lagos, in the FCT, and in other states. Amayole Showore, thank you very much for joining us, and of course, follow up with these issues and have you join us again.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a new day tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right. Let's move away from protest conversations now and bring it back to Lagos State, where the Lagos government has revealed its plans to generate 200 billion naira annually. We'll share you more details about this after this break. Welcome back. The Lagos State government has revealed its plans to generate 200 billion naira annually by expanding its income tax base to include remote workers and also leveraging digital solutions for enhanced revenue collection. This is outlined in the Eco Revenue Plus document ahead of the summit holding in September 2024. The plan aims to unlock 5 trillion naira in internally generated revenue from 4 key sectors, including the digital economy.
A new tax management system will be introduced to tap into the digital economy, focusing on remote workers, international companies, and online influencers. The plan is part of the Lagos New Money initiatives and aims to unlock an additional 2.73 trillion naira revenue stream. Joining us to discuss this is policy strategist and economist Razak Fatai. Good morning, Mr. Fatai. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We'll also be joined this morning by content creator and public media consultant Franklin Ikemefune. I believe he's here with us. Good morning, Mr. Ikemefune. All right, he'll be joining us shortly. All right, back to you, Mr. Fatai. When you heard about this new plan to tax influencers and to tax online remote workers, what came to your mind and how feasible a plan do you think this is?
Okay, so first let me say that we are currently experiencing a very challenging time in this country, a time where cost of living is very high, and as we've seen with the increasing agitation of citizens, people are quite agitated, and despite that, government has to, governance has to proceed. Like we need more resources to drive development, and in doing so, there have been various options on the table, whether to raise taxes for the corporate, or to raise taxes for the individuals, or to raise VAT and all of those. But I think this particular proposition from Lagos State is quite interesting because it's leveraging on the fact that we've seen, some growth in digital economy, and tapping into that sector by expanding the tax base is what they are trying to do, right? So it's not a case of trying to increase taxes, but rather to expand the base, which I think it's a good move. And with what I've seen with the projection of about 200 billion taxes to be generated from 2 million people, I'm a bit worried with those numbers because when you actually look at why it's a good move, I'm a bit worried with those numbers because 2 million people, in this particular sector might seem a bit, exaggerated, right? Because when you even look at the entire size of Nigerian workforce, we're looking at about 50 to 70 million people, and more than half of that, into primary agricultural production activities. And then when you continue to scale down up to this digital economy, which it's not as big as it of an employer of labor compared to most traditional sector. Why although it's a very productive sector, people tend to earn, relatively higher income than traditional sectors, but doesn't employ, as much as we often think. And in fact, this is something that I can buttress based on studies I've done in the past, trying to assess the digital sector, in Nigeria, where oftentimes you see them employing just a few people. But in the case of, the influencers and all of that, we see these people, we know, we know those are quite successful, right? And I don't think they're in millions, right? So for me, I would say that it's a good move, but I think it can be a little bit ambitious with the projection of 2 million people to be taxed in this category and 200 billion revenue targets. Given that Lagos itself currently does just about a trillion naira in terms of revenue generation. So that 200 billion from that particular segment feels quite too optimistic. Then in terms of whether it's practical, I think Lagos has shown to being a state that can really do the impossible, right? We've seen how they've been able to really boost their high GR over the years. But I think for this particular segment, they might have a bit of challenge in the sense that it requires a bit of, multilateral cooperation, right? If a tech guy who has a job, his employer is in the UK, you don't even know that employer, right? So it means that you need to leverage on data and, collaboration with these countries where the employers are to be able to ensure that you're accurately getting data to accurately, capture those who are benefiting from these opportunities. And the same for, most of these influencers, because the way they operate with most of these companies like YouTube and the rest is largely informal in some ways. So it can be very hard to, it to be very Herculean to start doing the mapping, but this is not to say it's not possible. But and given that Lagos has done a lot of interesting stuff in the past, I would say that I'm hopeful to see what they're able to do.
All right.
In that, but it's definitely going to be very challenging too.
And like you've mentioned, 200 billion naira target is quite ambitious. How do you think they can also navigate the aspects where there's people who already pay personal income tax? And the fears of double taxation for certain of these individuals. How do you think the Lagos State government maybe is able to navigate that?
So, like I said, it will be anchored on data, right? Making sure that there's a proper data of who are those that are currently paying taxes, right? I know for some of the remote workers, their companies do in such a way that they ask them to show their tax pay slip and all of those before they even get their income. They insist that some of them have to pay their taxes. However, we've seen several instances where people are not doing it. So I think it's really about trying to harmonize the existing, tax data, right? Trying to reconcile. And all of this is based on identity, right? So if you're able to identify someone as a unique identity to say, this person, is this person, right? This is tax ID number, and as paid tax, right? So if you have paid tax based on income you've declared, based on what they are saying coming into your bank account, there's no reason for you to pay tax in this new framework. So I think it's like I said, it's going to be a very challenging task, given that data systems and identity systems are quite fragmented, but it's Lagos, so it's not impossible for them to navigate this challenge. And I know that Lagos is also a state that tends to, drive some level of citizen engagement, and they are quite transparent in terms of, also publishing data on their affairs. So imagine that they will find a way around it.
Yeah, I don't expect that it would be very easy, but is it a justified move by the Lagos State government? There's people who would argue yes and no. There's also the angles where there are certain countries that are more welcoming to remote workers. Cyprus and Greece and some other cities like that have been mentioned that have even tax cuts for remote workers to at least to attract more remote workers to come over, and live in those places. But, Lagos is doing the, complete opposite. So there's that angle. But I want us to quickly bring in someone who's an influencer, is a content creator, Franklin Ikemefune. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you join us. I'm sure you've also read through the report. Is this, welcoming for you? Are you excited about paying your taxes to Lagos State government as a content creator?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we need to look at it from the standpoint of the tax system is primarily promulgated upon the social contract. So I bring in my tax, and then there are incentives, there are perks that I have to get from paying my taxes. I think the major challenge has been issues of transparency. There seems to be a mistrust, or a certain level of mistrust, between the people and the government. It feels like a lot of energy is being exerted on the part of the government to ensure that the people hold up the end of the bargain. But when it comes to actually, when it comes to the government fulfilling their end of the bargain, then it leaves a lot to be desired. So I think that's primarily the problem. I don't think that paying the tax in itself is the challenge. I think it's the fact that it feels like it's only the energy is not being reciprocated on the part of the government. I think that's the major challenge here.
Can you be more specific? When you say the energy is not being reciprocated, what do you mean? And then also, is it common knowledge among other content creators that everybody pays their taxes? Do you also regularly pay your taxes to the Lagos State government?
Oh, yeah, yes, I do.
Based on your earnings?
Yes, I do. I pay to the LIRS. I have my identification.
And so is this a common concept among other content creators? Do they also have their LIRS relationship where they remit as they receive?
I can only speak for myself. I do not know what goes into the coffers of other content creators, but I know that I pay.
Mr. Fattah is laughing at you. Mr. Fattah, do you think otherwise?
No, I think he can only speak for himself, like you said.
Absolutely.
But it's a black hole. Like, you really don't know how big that space is, and who is actually paying. And just like you said, the issue of social contract is an issue, but from a standpoint of fairness, I think it's okay for them to pay, right? Because there are people who don't even earn anything close to what most influencers earn, and their taxes are deducted from the source, right? So it would be unfair to those people, right, if they are paying taxes and there are some part of the population that are not doing so. So from a fairness standpoint, I think it's okay, right, that they pay taxes, and so which means that the government is in the right direction. But I also think the government also has a lot to do, right, in making sure that these resources are well utilized, which is a major challenge in Nigeria today, where government gets taxes and what we see is most of it ends up being stolen, right? And people can't really justify why they have to pay. And in fact, even for those who are paying, if they have their way, they would avoid the taxes.
Yeah,
So,
and that's the thing, that I want us to wrap up with, which is, has Lagos State also created itself as an environment that is favorable for content creators? I'm going to start with Mr. Franklin. Quickly respond to that. Has Lagos State made, the content creator market, the remote work market, or made itself, favorable to the remote, work market, the content creator market, to justify? I mean, even if yes, you must pay your taxes regardless. But, you get the question, to justify its demand for taxes to be paid.
I do not think so. First of all, a lot of the remote workers that I know do not live in Lagos. So, sincerely, when I saw the numbers yesterday, I was taken aback, because I initially thought the 200 billion was the entirety of what they were trying to accrue across board, until I realized the 200 billion was solely from the remote workers and the content creators. And I was wondering where those numbers were going to come from, So I don't know a lot of remote workers who still live in Lagos. First off, you have to take into consideration the fact that the rent is absurd in Lagos. And then there's the issue of, having more people live in Lagos than the city itself geographically is able to contain. So I don't think that in that regard you can say that there is a lot that people will miss if they run away as a result of not. I'm talking specifically for remote workers now.
Yes.
If they run away and go to other locations, right? As for the content creators, I guess it's only because Lagos seems to be the social hub or social capital, or provides the avenue for fanfare as opposed to like in comparison to other locations in Nigeria. So I guess that's the only thing, But apart from that, I don't see how a lot of remote workers or content creators will not, if they are left with no other choice, I don't see how they won't leave Lagos.
Yeah. All right.
You know?
All right. And just to wrap up quickly, Fatai, or Mr. Razak Fatai, what incentives do you think Lagos has to convince anybody who's a content creator here or a remote worker here to, immediately run to the LIRS and, pay their taxes?
Okay, so I would say that based on the status quo, it's not like much has been done to actually incentivize and hit that particular segment. But you could also see from as part of the strategy, they've also highlighted some of the things that they try to do, like having hubs to help grow more, to drive the prospect of the digital economy. So which I believe that if the government is really being sincere about doing that, it should in some ways kind of complement the need for them to tax, this particular segment. And like Frank rightly mentioned, I think there might also be some challenges in the sense that because if Lagos is the only state implementing this, it means that people can now move from Lagos to Ibadan, right, to set up shop, or move from there to Ogun State, which is just very close to Lagos, and then they can avoid to pay the taxes. So I think for this to really be effective, the government has to fulfill their own bargain on the social contract, kind of making more investment to support stakeholders in this segment. But also, I think this is something that has to be replicated across all states. Right?
All states, yeah.
And that's the only way to kind of ensure that, it doesn't create some kind of distortions in the system.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it could be a case of an home goal for Lagos State.
Yeah. All right. But we'll see how things turn out. I'm guessing, in the next few days, we'll have someone from the Lagos State government join us to explain further, about, navigating around the double taxation aspect, and also what the Lagos State government incentives are for, of course, encouraging more people to go to the LIRS and pay their taxes as content creators and remote workers. Thank you very much, Razak Fatai, for joining us, and Franklin Ikemefune for your time. We'd love to speak with you again pretty soon.
It's a pleasure.
All right,
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
And now let's take you through a quick recap, some of the things we've spoken about in the past hour, and also share with you what's coming up right next. Omoyele Showore join us and share his thoughts on that. And Lagos attacks remote workers, influencers as it eyes 200 billion naira annual income from that. Plateau State government backs down from protest, says peace is key. But that's not all this morning. We also have a lot more coming your way in the second half of Breakfast Central. Remember to join us. The Paris 2024 Olympic Games and little details surrounding it. Newspaper front pages as well. What are the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning? And also, which way Nigeria? Stay with us. And now it's time to find out what major stories are making headlines across Nigeria today. And joining us is Public Affairs Analyst Sheson Okunade. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, Osega. I'm glad to be here this morning.
All right. 24 hours before the proposed protests, I'm guessing it's going to make many of the stories on the headlines this morning. But let's get straight into it. We'll kick off with the Vanguard newspapers and see what we can find. Big one on your screen there says, protest. Organizers list convergence points for rallies. Falana Adeborowa, NBA to lead meeting with the IGP. It also says LP Lagos Patriots pull out of protest. I'm not sure who those are. Jakonde lecture, publishers and editors, others point way forward to media survival. We can also find on the Vanguard this morning, top of the screen, federal government hands over 400 CNG kits to transporters in 4 states. Federal government suspends duty on rice, flour, and other essential food items. And also learn from Kenya's bitter experience, Bishop warns. Nigeria's Bonny Light price drops to $79 per barrel, lowest in 7 weeks. Those are the major stories on Vanguard. Daily Independent coming up next. Organizers, IGP Egbertokunu disagree on confined protests. This is on the Daily Independent now. Protesters ask IGP for details of officers to protect them. Court restricts protests in Lagos to freedom and peace parks. Hoodlums threaten to deal with protesters in Lagos. Interesting. Catholic bishops blame protest on government's neglect of Nigerians. We can also find here $2.5 million debt relief. Passengers stranded as Nama grounds Arik aircraft. Still on the Daily Independent newspapers. Pacified Nigerians, not threat inducement, ex-SGF Lawal tells Tinubu. Why we can't join planned nationwide protest, says the ACF. And also Tinubu Uzodinma Abiodun Oni seek unity of southern monarchs. Reps Speaker asks protesters to shelve action in nation's interest. Anyway, let's just get straight into it. You know, I'm going to start with the call from an ex-GF Lawal to President Tinubu saying, pacify Nigerians, not threat or inducement. What we've seen is more of certain characters and personalities threatening, Nigerians to not come out to protest. Here in Lagos, Asarido Kobo has also been seen. We've seen thugs, or well, I think I can call them thugs, in one market or the other in Lagos, making these threats. We've also seen people sharing tiny bags of rice and whatnot, also to seemingly pacify the protesters. But we've not heard from Mr. President. So when they say pacify the people, what do you expect that should be?
Oh, thank you very much, sir. I think first and foremost, personally, I've expected Mr. President at least to communicate with us as the father of the nation, not talking through the spokesperson or the presidency. At this point in time, it's a word from Mr. President will definitely change the dynamics of things, even though...
Do you think so?
Yeah, it will, because you are hearing it from the horse's mouth. A lot of people, don't forget, what brought us here is the issue of trust deficit. A lot of promises on the path of our leaders and not actually actualizing it, and it metamorphosed into people taking laws into their hands. So like they said, I was expecting that possibly today the president would have come on a nationwide address to the people, knowing that this can actually cause a lot of loss of so many things if we go by the experience of what we had last year, 2020. And when you look at the issue at which we have at hand, we have protests, before protest, protest against protest. Yep. And you ask yourself, that was peaceful. Why are we envisaging that the one from the first will not be peaceful? That's what is so worrisome to everyone. And when you look at the issues surrounding this thing, we saw a lot of reactive things being done by the government, giving out palliative. People shared. Yesterday, I saw a video where people were sharing rice on the street, and you ask, is it about this that we're talking about? And it's good, in as much as the government have not sent certain set of people to caution. I want the situation where we speak softly to one another. The fear I have is that people that are speaking out against those that want to carry out peaceful protest might be the one that will actually say we are protecting our sovereignty and, come out with... There are so many heavy words on the part of some of the people that are actually thinking they are speaking for the government, which is really not going well with those that are going through some of these problems. So I feel Mr. President needs to come. You now have two sides of the coin. people speaking on your behalf to speak in making sure that, please, we don't need this. The government is already responding. Then the president can come and say, guys, I'm really sorry. This is really happening. But I have taken this step. We saw on the headline this morning, 400 CNG kits, being shared. I've seen, stations, points where you have CNG, people are converting it, and they are promoting that. So some of the things that they promise are actually coming out. But it may seem a bit late. But on my own, I feel even the noise we made about this protest has drew the attention of the government in such a way that they know that it's not business as usual. But my fear is always when you call something peaceful. I'm sure you saw the video that went viral yesterday with this Federal College of Technology, ACOCA, the student. They started peacefully, but it ended up in a very chaotic manner where they had to destroy things. And I've said it times to that number that some of us too I've been a member of the Student Representative Council while I was in school. It's not that coming to destroy assets like we have it currently. Some people are just of the attitude that any little move you make is to first attack individual, whether they are innocent, whether they are part, whether they are engaged. Once they are not in line with you, you attack them. And I think we must change that orientation.
Again, those things happen mostly because of the failure of the Nigerian state to manage disgruntled voices and to manage, the idea of a protest. If we had a situation where Nigerians obviously always know that if you break or destroy government property, you will be caught and you will be arrested and you would, pay a fine, you go to jail. It probably would reduce that. If we also had a situation where the police understood that their role during the protest is not to antagonize the protesters, but to instead, protect them and, of course, guide them through whatever the protest is meant to achieve, then we'll see that. But we've seen, that the Nigerian police has not been able to do that. We keep seeing a show of force every day. Show of force in the Federal Capital Territory. Show of force in Lagos. I'm sure that by 9 a.m. this morning, if you drive past the Lekki toll gate, you would see a lot of policemen standing there to, of course, once again, seemingly intimidate protesters. And that's not being the best way to address, the idea of protesting. You spoke earlier about, a voice from the presidency. Mr. President hasn't spoken yet, but we've had official and non-official spokespersons addressing Nigerian protesters, threatening them, advising them. We've had Ajuri Ngelale say one thing, we've had Bayo Onanuga say a totally different thing. Bayo Onanuga is even going as far as blaming IPOB and blaming Nnamdi Kanu and blaming obedience for being behind protest. So it is just a complete mismanagement of it, and that's the way that I interpret it.
Yeah, Osag, the truth be told, you're very much correct. And that's why I feel that the president needs to speak, because some of the handlers of his media are not doing justice to what they are supposed to do. I even reacted to the word of the number 3 man of the citizen, the Senate president, when he said those that actually failed in the last election should go back to the drawing board. Speaking as if it's like I said, the way Asari Dokubo spoke. And personally, I am disappointed because it's not about issue of the failure in the last election.
For those who don't know, Asari Dokubo, if you're hearing the name for the first time, is a former militant leader that allegedly took arms against the Nigerian state for many years.
So I feel that it's not about you addressing the issue to say, no, those that failed last year are the one instigating issue. Everyone can tell you with iota of truth that things are not going the proper way. Businesses are bleeding. The only people that you can currently say that are enjoying the largesse of this country are the politicians. Every businesses, do you know the number of multinationals that have excused themselves out of this country? Do you know the number of small and medium businesses that cannot even survive the terror of things because of the cost of operation? And we are coming to say it's about the issue of the field. Personally, I felt disappointed. No reservation about that. When it comes to the way the Senate president has actually addressed those issues, I think much is expected from someone of that caliber, that you're thinking that it's about failed politicians
yes,
that is reacting to this. It's beyond that, because indeed every area, every aspect, everywhere is actually being tackled and things are not smiling. I must say, go to an average. We've seen the number of beggars on the road, corporate beggars, on daily basis. And it's about the failures that we're talking about. People are being excused from their work, and all they could resort to is you just see them on the road. When you wake up every morning, the number of messages you get of people telling you that, please, you know, there's one slogan in town, urgent 2K. You know, people don't even ask for so much. Now accumulate when you have 2K from 20 people in a day. That's over 40,000.
How much of, you know, the guest that we had yesterday said that the idea that there's a call for protest 14 months into the new administration is a direct report card on how the government has fared. Do you agree with that? You know, and that's why initially I was asking, what new thing is President Bola Tinubu going to say? I mean, in what way is he meant to express himself that will convince Nigerians that there should be calm across the nation? Because if 14 months into your administration, people have been watching, people have been listening, people have been seeing how the government has been run so far.
Yeah, indeed, 14 months is enough, because I remember when the current president led the protest against Jonathan in 2012. It was just barely 6 months into the administration.
To January.
To January. So it's about 6-7 months. And here we are, 14 months down the drain. We have not gotten anything positive, I must say. Things are not moving the right way it should go. I must tell you, as a business person, the parameters of measuring certain things are not just there. Look at the interest rate. When some of us are growing up that we started business, you don't even go that far in area to say you want to have as much margin as 30% for every businesses that you intend to do. But situation where the cost of borrowing is as high as 35%, how do you expect an average businessman to carry out such businesses? So indeed, they are right that we had 14 months to actually study the terrain of things. And we've not seen so much. When you talked about energy cost, it's been on the high side. You can promise, as far as I'm concerned, I've not heard of increase in generation. I've not heard about increase in distribution, in transmission. It's still the same number of kilowatts that is being generated years back that we are still on. And you ask yourself, so those that you are placed on higher band, where are you giving those things to? So it's to tell you that you are using Peter to rub Paul, because some people are suffering it for those ones to enjoy, because we have not heard. We should be talking of, we have moved from about 3,000 megawatt that we have, maybe to about 7,000. Then you can say that the excess is what you are distributing to those that you have actually increased their band to make up with some of those things. These are actually challenges that we have, and we can say it without any other. But I would not say that people should go out and make protest the way to actually answer some of these things, because of the past antecedent. We are going to be like 500 steps backwards if we allow this to happen, because our security agencies, to me, cannot match those protesters when they come out if it is being hijacked.
All right. I think if we can have the producers put the demands, the protest demands on screen, so we can share with our guests and share with our viewers this morning, and we can, use that, as our next question. The 10 demands. Omoyele Sowore also had his own demands that he promoted on his X page, which had 15 demands. All right.
We can see here extracts of our demands. 1, revert petrol pump price to 100 naira to a litre. Combat insecurity and hunger, close all IDP camps. I can see you laughing. Even me, when I read when I was reading it was heavy in my mouth. Combat insecurity and hunger, close all IDP camps and resettle the campus. Total electoral reform and independent probe into the electoral budget of 355 billion. There's so many demands, you can see them. The immediate release of all NSAS protesters still in detention. Implementation of living wage minimum of 300K, compulsory free education from primary to secondary school, education grants at tertiary level. Are these things, is any of these things achievable?
Sincerely speaking, Olive, we are asking, you saw me laughing, this we can't achieve.
No, that one of the 100 naira to a litre, yes. But for the others? combat insecurity and
when you say
hunger.
combat insecurity, they will tell you that they are working.
combating
It's part of what. There is no day we come here, Olive, that we don't speak to this issue of insecurity. If we clamor and we hear the president coming to say they are working on it, we are giving marching order to the security agencies. We are trying our best. In fact, the last administration were told that they were able to tame and make sure that those things. But how many of those IDPs people have gone back to their base? The answer is no.
Just, and something that I will speak about next week, very likely, on Which Way Nigeria. I did see a BBC documentary that was done that was speaking about 4.4 million children that are dying of starvation in Katsina State. It's a very, very, very painful. If you watch that documentary, I think it's currently on their website or on their social media pages, your heart will bleed.
It's not only in Katsina, Osai. It's not only in Katsina. It's difficult for certain set of people to move on the street as we speak. You don't dress like this and people don't even ask you for money. If you live here and you're going home, don't drive your car, because when you even drive the car, it's a different thing entirely. Just you are walking on the street. Be rest assured that before you move certain steps, you have about 3-4 people coming to like, bros, anything for the guy. They are not out to attack you. They just feel that for you to have dressed in that manner, and they are looking at you, you're looking nice, you are more comfortable, and you can even give out of it, not knowing that it's the exigency of your job that is making you to dress like that. You yourself, at times, you may not even have anything in your pocket.
So you're saying that not all of these, because we had Omoyele Sowore earlier, and he argued that all those demands are achievable.
For me, I would say it's not all. There are some that I would stand by, like the issue of insecurity is part of the things I've been advocating for, because when you have a secured environment, truth be told, the kind of business I operate gives me the opportunity to travel around the country. And I don't fly. Those days, I move from one state to the other, but these days, it's really, really impossible. And that has actually impacted on my business as an individual. I travel from Lagos to Southwest, from Southwest, I connect the Southeast, from the Southeast, I go to the North. And it's all by road. I can be on the road for a month. But these days, I cannot even move within Southwest because of the issue of insecurity. And this, I can tell you that if you're able to address the issue of security, you have actually solved more than 70% of what, because Nigerians are very creative. We are ready to actually tap out of it. Don't forget, by the time you address the issue of insecurity, you have addressed the issue of food insecurity, which is the aspect of agriculture where people can go out.
As quickly as possible. I mean, part of why the current Nigerians are complaining about the current administration is not because they don't understand that things have gotten bad, but also because the government doesn't seem on its own end to be cutting down its expenses. The front page of The Nation says, EFCC grills NACON boss over 90 billion naira Hajj fund. That's the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria, Jalal Arabi, and reports have it that there have been petitions leveled against him. 90 billion naira Hajj fund. Why? I mean, I've heard a conversation about why we're still talking about religious pilgrimage, sponsoring a country that is where its citizens are struggling to feed. They're still focusing on religious pilgrimage.
I will always tell you that we have this misplacement of priority as a nation. And the level at which we handle corruption is not actually the way to go. You ask yourself, this is just art. There are other agencies. I saw a video that was actually viral of somebody making a complaint that somebody who is in the administration is already thinking of having the 4th building in Canada for all his family to settle them, because he doesn't know the outcome of this appraisal that they are doing, so that he can have his own fair share. So you've seen instances where people admitted that they've actually mismanaged funds, misdirected funds, and nothing is done to them. They still use some of these funds to intimidate and to oppress the people that they are supposed to serve. I feel that our area of addressing corruption is really not the way that we should have. Most of the time we see people being prosecuted on the faces of the daily newspapers, people responding and reacting, but nothing is done from the court where you are supposed to actually punish some of those people that are actually, this that you are saying about this act, it will come, it will go, and nothing will happen to that person.
And they will pay for another Hajj.
Of course, that is very sure. You see, we are too religious. If they are not paying for Hajj, they are paying for Jerusalem pilgrimage, so that at least, because they know everybody wants to go and pray, prayer is the problem, not acting to do certain things.
Many people say that it's not necessarily about even them being religious, but mainly because of a political quota to different vested interests. But
You
that's
can imagine what that 90 billion will do, rather than pumping it into Arch, maybe even to resuscitate one of the refineries. Even if you are not closing it, it will go a very long way.
Olusegun Kwade, thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Always a pleasure to start the day
More
with you.
stories to come this way. After we return from this break, we have Which Way Nigeria?
Ladies and gentlemen, this morning I am asking the very simple question, where is Mr. President? Has anyone seen him? In the wake of all the calls for a protest and the maybe already started counter-protests in parts of the country, while Nigerians are struggling to buy petrol and staying in long queues for hours, where is Mr. President? The president who ran for elections in 2023 campaigned for months and months through rain and sun, from Chatham House to the Teslim Balogun Stadium. The person who moved around the country seeking votes from Nigerians and was eventually declared winner of the elections. Where, again, is Mr. President? Now, I don't ask this very, question similar to the way that it was asked in the previous administration, where former President Buhari was periodically away from public view, creating, some fears that he was not in his best health. No, I'm not in any way insinuating that Mr. President is maybe ill, like we feared with former President Buhari, or somehow missing. But still, just like the former president, I'm asking, where is Mr. President? Because they seem to have the exact same manner of leadership, where they seem to just be president, but are almost never seen or heard from. I said it in the run-up to the 2023 elections that whoever won the elections then would have to decide if to lead Nigeria the exact same way the former President Buhari did, which is to just be president, but never actually be seen being president. To be declared winner and then just spend 4 years within the walls of Aso Rock and only be seen during FEC meetings or on your way out for foreign trips, but never really out and about within Nigeria being president. So the winner of the 2023 elections would either be that way or choose to be better and actually be present, be heard, be seen, be active dealing with the job of being president of 200 million people. I'm going to quote from an article which was written by well-respected journalist and senior colleague Dr. Reuben Abati in June 2021, titled Interviewing President Buhari. In that article, he said, nonetheless, the excitement that has been demonstrated over the Buhari interview owes in part to the status of public perception about the president's unwillingness to communicate directly with the people who elected him into office in 2015 and 2019. For the better part of his 6 years in power, President Buhari has engaged more with Nigerians through third parties, spokespersons, and press statements. Other presidents before him appeared regularly on presidential media chats during which they responded to the people's concerns. Not this president. In 6 years, he has not granted one presidential media chat. Now, that article was written in 2021 and may as well have been written in 2024 because it is seemingly the exact same thing that is playing out between President Buhari and President Tinubu. So I ask again, where is Mr. President? In a moment when Nigerians would really love to hear from their president to calm nerves across the nation. To be present and to be president in this time and speak words that will convince the Nigerian people that they are in safe hands. Because that's really what it requires. To calm tension across the nation and convincingly break down the plans that you have for the Nigerian people in a way that they would trust in you as their president and believe Nigeria is safe under your leadership. The words from spokespersons and governors and traditional rulers and former militant leaders may not be enough in this time, Mr. President. Mr. President, you ran to be elected to serve the Nigerian people. So why is it hard to find you in these troubled times? In moments like this, Nigerians are going to assume that Mr. President either doesn't think the citizens or their complaints are important enough to speak to, or Mr. President doesn't have the right answers to the cries of the people, hence the silence. Nigerians will be forced to assume that your government doesn't truly have what it takes to fix our ailing nation, and that's why you have remained silent. Good morning, Nigerians.
The Paris 2024 Olympic Games kicked off on July 24th, 2024, with an estimated 10,714 athletes from 206 countries. As the world's greatest athletes compete for both individual glory and national pride at the Paris Olympic Games, spectators at home will also wonder which country will have the honor of raking in the most medals. The US, Japan, and China, and the host country, France, are leading the medal count. However, it may be safe to not make too many assumptions on who is going home with the win.
Now, though there are no medals to Nigeria's name yet, the Nigerian women's basketball team defeated Australia in the Olympics opener for both teams. It was the first win in the Olympics in 20 years for the African nation. Now, joining us is Deji Omotoyinbo, who's a sports correspondent, and of course, joining us from Paris in France. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. There's so much to talk about with the Olympics, but I'm going to try and keep the focus on the Nigerian side. First of all, let's kick off with the controversy concerning Favour Ofili. I woke up and saw the news this morning that her name was omitted. And this is the second time. She also says that in the previous past Olympics, they also, failed, the Nigerian Olympic Committee failed to fund their logistics to the Olympics, and eventually they weren't able to make it. And this is the second time. So let's get your thoughts on this. What's going on?
Well, it does seem to me that someone always tends to drop the ball on the administrative side when it comes to things like this. If you remember in Tokyo, there was even a protest by these athletes who their testing was not funded and they didn't do the required number of tests. So that time they were not allowed to compete by the IOC because they did not fulfill requirements leading to the competition that every athlete must undergo. This time, that's not the case. She's qualified and she wasn't entered for the 100 meters. She qualified. She was supposed to run the 100, the 200, and the 4x100. Now, yes. Informed athletic sources and coaches, and they tell me that the reason for that may have been because the way the schedule is at these Olympics, if she's going to take part in those three events, she's going to run every day, all through the athletics event, and that might be a bit too excessive in terms of workload for her. Okay, that's granted. But if that is the case, the athlete should have been involved in the decision and not getting to know when it was already fait accompli after the fact. So maybe the problem here is that when you take a decision affecting somebody, the person has a right to know. If you look at it from a sporting perspective, it might be a reasonable decision to say, okay, you're going to do all this. And I think all the other athletes too, nobody's going to run 3 events. They kind of made sure that to reduce the workload, because I think before now, previous Olympics, you could run this, take a day's rest, take a day's rest. But this one, the schedule is such that if it's going to do those 3 events, she's going to run all through. So if you feel the workload is going to be excessive, I think you should sit Favour down and tell Favour, look, we're going to take this decision in your best interest because of the way this schedule is. So even if the athlete does not agree to that, you have taken her into consideration because it's like a coach deciding, I will not play you in a football game. Even if you don't agree, he has a right. But at least he has told you will not play. So that's where somebody dropped the ball. She should have been informed. For this reason, for that reason, we are not going to let you run the 100. We feel you have a better chance of the 200, so that we run the 4x100.
Is it confirmed that she's getting the 200 and 4x100 or the 400 meters?
Well, I would think so. Like she didn't. If she wasn't entered for those, I guess she would have complained about that as well. I think she complained about the event where she was not entered for.
Yeah.
But officially, she was listed for the 100, the 200, and the 400. And the person that I spoke to last night is a former Olympic gold medalist, actually. And he says that he thinks that's the reason. But like I said, somebody dropped the ball. If you're taking a decision that's going to affect a particular athlete, you should let him or her know what decision you're taking and why you're taking it, and take them along in the process.
If we find that this was just due to some measure of nonchalance, do you expect that, there will be people who will be made to pay the price for what has happened? Do you expect consequences for this?
I was going to use that word you just used. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, there are usually no consequences. It's sad, but there's usually nobody. The one that happened in Tokyo, I don't think anybody was punished in any way for it. Life just goes on, and I really don't understand it. From the administrative perspective, your job is to make sure what needs to be done at a particular time. But I won't hold out any hopes that anybody will be made to pay for anything. It's just a situation of usually there are no consequences, and we just move on.
Yeah. All right, Deji, let's also talk about the medal race. I think I can see that Japan is currently on top with gold medals, I believe. But I've personally been watching, back at home, and I'm looking out at many sports, and I don't see Nigerian names anywhere, which breaks my heart, because I know that we're really just stuck with football and basketball, and then some athletics, and that's all. But are we expecting? Do you have any faith that a Nigerian would win a medal, in this Olympics? And if we don't do very well, will this once again just paint a picture of where we are with regards support for sports and sports funding in Nigeria? And, the wishful thinking that we just have, thinking that we're going to not invest in sports and suddenly you'll somehow just win a medal at the Olympics.
You nailed it right there with your last sentence. You're not just going to win a medal without proper planning, without proper funding and budgeting. It's not going to happen. But tracking back to the earlier part of your question, no country has talents across board. Countries determine their area of core competence and more or less focus on that. That's why the countries you're talking about, China, some of the Australia, swimming has many medals. Those who know that their forte is in swimming, they stick to it. In Africa, the Kenyans will know two sports might give us medals, might. Toby Amusan, of course, on everybody's lips, world record holder, is a tough, there are about 2 or 3 other athletes in that space that is going to be very tough for her, but I would be disappointed if she does not even win a medal at all. She's never won an Olympic medal, and the Olympic gold is the only thing missing from her success list, so to speak. So I expect Toby to grab one medal. Hopefully it will be gold, but if not gold, I expect her to win one medal in that space. Wrestling is also where I think we might be successful. Blessing Obrodudu won silver at the Tokyo Olympics. Odunayo Adekoroye, who we had high expectations for her, made a mistake in the first round and got eliminated. 4 years down the line, or 3 years down the line, she's much more mature, and we're expecting great things from her. For me, those are the 3 top medal prospects. The relays is a place where we're very strong. We have an Olympic relay gold in 4x400 meters men. We have bronze, we have silver, but we're getting back to the relays. I think these relays, there's only one relay that we did not qualify for. So there might be an outside chance of a medal in the relays. Weightlifting, we tend to do well as well. But for me, the ones where I'm expecting medals are in athletics. Toby Amusan, I think the other lady, can't remember her name now, is a little bit injured. We don't know the status of her situation. But Toby, definitely medal prospects. Blessing Obrodudu and Adunayo Adekoroye in wrestling, medal prospects. Interestingly, they're all women.
How would you say that Nigeria has fared? Oh, I like that you said that last line. I really love it. It excited me a little too much. How would you say that Nigeria, how have we fared in terms of preparing for the Paris Olympics? Reports having that we have about 12 billion naira that was allocated by the federal government for the preparation of this. And the usual drama, that we would typically see hasn't, in some cases, reared its head in terms of maybe not payment of ticket prices, ticket fees and all the likes. But how would you say that we have fared in our preparation so far? Are you impressed? Are there any challenges that we might have?
That is the weakest aspect of our sports administration. We simply don't plan ahead. We simply don't do long term. And I honestly, I've been crying myself hoarse for a long time. You are not going to get success on the short term. It's not going to happen. 12 billion was released when? I think majority of the money that was used is for travel, logistics, and accommodation and all of that, not for funding or training or grants to the athletes. Because if that's what it's meant for, you don't release it at the 23rd hour of the day. So for me, the money that the 12 billion was released, I think, is for pure logistics. I do not know. Olympics is a 4-year cycle. And, I've been here, I've seen some of these prospects, some of these guys who are medalists. That journey started from when they were 9, 10. We simply do not do long term. Yeah. When the Chinese come here for the table tennis competition, they bring 13, 14, 15-year-olds.
You mentioned something earlier, about how, the Kenyans stick with long distance running because they know that's their strength, and I would always have the perspective that I don't think that there's any particular sport that we cannot find in Nigerian, with long distance. It's really just training and the facilities to train everyone. We could do very well with swimming. We could do very well with gymnastics. We could do very well with, athletics. And of course, with football, we're already there. We just need to put some interest in it. But I want to talk about something. The women seem to be the ones championing Nigerian sports at this point. Aside the Nigerian, Super Eagles, the male team, you barely called any names that you expect to win medals at the Olympics, any male names. So what is going on with the male athletes? Is there something that we're not seeing?
Well, I really can't place my finger on it. The earlier part of your observation, I go back again. If you're going to be successful in any sport, it's not going to happen overnight. The other sports that you mentioned, we have to invest over time. Yes, I agree the talent is there, but talent is not enough. Are we ready to put in the long-term work to get to the point where we'll be competing at the Olympic level? I'm not sure we're ready to do that. I really can't place my finger on why. I think maybe it's just a coincidence. It's just happening for the past few years. The women have been bailing us out more or less. But even at the Super Eagles that you mentioned, Super Eagles level, the Super Falcons have been put behind the Super Eagles, which I think is not fair. Even the Tigers, the basketball team, they qualified for the World Cup last time. Some shenanigans, some infighting. The minister made a bad decision, pulled us out. They couldn't go for a World Cup that they qualified for. But here they are. They are the only bright spark we've had in this game so far. And hopefully they'll continue in that vein tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep up with the Olympics and see how things progress. And we're rooting for our girls to make us proud. Thank you for your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And as we wrap up the show on a final, very much lighter note, Osaogi, I'm going to put you on the spot in 30 seconds. If you could represent Nigeria in one game at the Olympics, which would it be?
If I could?
Yes.
Is it the one that I personally would want to, or the one that you think I'm mostly skilled at?
Both.
The one I think I would, I admired the swimming.
Me too.
I've been watching a lot of the swimming,
exactly.
The medley. There's just so much.
There's
it was
one
so
particular
beautiful.
woman, a 99-year-old woman who broke a record for the 100 to 109 category. I think I saw.
I didn't see that.
Saw a clip.
But that one, I've really enjoyed the swimming experience. Just watching, these athletes compete. Yes,
their freestyle.
It's been really beautiful.
Yes, I really like
the one that I feel like I would be successful at would maybe be
wrestling.
Why?
Seeing how you love to wrestle our,
Not wrestling. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe football, maybe long distance running. I don't know.
Yeah, you run.
Yeah,
you run,
so that's maybe running.
For me, I don't know if I have the talent for anyone, but the one I would desire would definitely be swimming. All right. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow. If the protests hold, we want to ask everyone to please be safe, and we'll be bringing you updates here on Breakfast Central. Until we come your way again, I am Olive Emodi.
And I am Osaogi Ogbuke, wishing you a blissful day ahead.